Go. I'm going to give everybody a chance to come into the room. Please, please, please feel free. Introduce yourself in the chat. Say hi. Use the chat often and vigorously so that we can share this experience together. I'm going to give it one more minute-ish, and then we'll go ahead and get started so that we can be on time and respect everyone's time and the fact that you guys chose to show up and be here. I see y'all coming in. I see Georgia, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago. Wonderful. Welcome, welcome. And all right, I think we'll go ahead and get started. So I have already been talking. Let me say hello and introduce myself. I'm your moderator for the day. I am Bridget Piku. I'm with the Well Project. I'm their stakeholder liaison. And you know where you are, just in case you don't. You are taking part today in our creating a life beyond HIV. And we all know that that's important, and we've been doing it. And I welcome you into this space, and thank you for being here. Just a quick little tech, housekeeping thing. Make sure that you're muted. You're welcome to be on or off camera as you'd like. I'm going to take a moment right now because the Reunion Project is absolutely committed to language justice. And as such, we are going to have some interpreters here. So I'm going to give a moment or two for the interpreters to introduce themselves and kind of run through how it's going to work and what needs to happen. So I'm going to turn it over to them very briefly.
Muchas gracias. Buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es José Eduardo. Estoy aquí con Andy y el día de hoy vamos a interpretar entre inglés y español. And Andy, I think you're on mute.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Jose Eduardo, and I am here with my colleague, Andy Escobar, doing interpreting for this event from English into Spanish.
Para el crear un espacio multilingüe no es solo la responsabilidad de los intérpretes, sino de todas las personas en el espacio. Entonces, aquí van algunas maneras en las que nos pueden ayudar.
Creating a multilingual space isn't only the responsibility of the interpreters, but everyone here. So here are some tips that we have to create a multilingual space here.
Para los presentadores de hoy, pueden ayudarnos hablando a ritmo moderado, voz alta y claramente. Si necesitamos que hablen más despacio o más fuerte, les dejaremos saber a través del chat.
For those presenting today, you can help by speaking at a moderate pace, loudly and clearly. If we need you to speak more slowly or loudly, we'll let you know through the chat.
Para todos los participantes, por favor, no sufran en silencio. Si la interpretación no funciona o están teniendo otras dificultades, déjenos saber a través del chat para poder asistirles.
For all participants, please don't suffer in silence. If the interpretation is not working or you're having other technical difficulties, please let us know in the chat so we can help you.
Okay. En un momentito van a encender la interpretación de Zoom y van a ver un pequeño icono de globo en la parte inferior de sus pantallas con un mensaje que dice interpretación de idiomas. Hagan clic en el globo y elijan el idioma en el que les gustaría participar y escuchar durante la sesión de hoy.
In a moment, the Zoom interpretation will be turned on and you'll see a globe in the lower part of your screen with a message about language interpretation. Click on the globe and select the language in which you'd like to participate and listen during this session.
Si nos acompaña a través de su celular o tablet, puede hacer clic en los tres puntitos en la esquina derecha de la parte baja de su pantalla, elija interpretación de idiomas y después seleccione su idioma. Asegúrese de hacer clic en finalizado y estarán listos.
If you're joining through your smartphone or tablet, you can click on the three dots on the bottom right corner of your screen, select language interpretation, and then choose your language. Make sure to click done and you'll be set.
Les recordamos que todas las personas tienen que escoger un idioma, sea inglés o español.
We want to remind you that everyone needs to select a language, whether it's English or Spanish.
Gracias a The Reunion Project, y ahora Heather puede encender la función de interpretación. Muchas gracias.
Thank you to the Reunion Project, and we can go ahead and start the interpretation.
That you are muted.
Sorry, my bad, I was muted. Remember to please select a language, it should be whether it's English or Spanish. If you don't see the globe, please send us a message in the chat so that we can help you out with that. And I want to thank the interpreters for the clear instructions and for being here today with us. So just another reminder real quickly to everyone, the webinar is being recorded. You do have the option of turning off your camera. I can't see anybody because I'm in speaker view, but you do have the option of turning off your camera if you are uncomfortable with that. You also can go in and change your name if you'd like to do that. But just be aware that we are recording today, okay? And at this time, I want to go ahead and thank our funders. Without them, this wouldn't be possible. They're as much a part of our community as we are of theirs. So thank you to Gilead, to Vive, and to Broadway Cares for sponsoring our event today. The absolute pleasure of introducing two amazing folks that most of you probably know. They are our National Host Committee co-chairs. We have Mark King, and Mark is a GLAAD award-winning writer and long-term HIV survivor who has been chronicling his life with HIV since being diagnosed in 1985. And Cecilia Dennis is a passionate advocate for the modernization and repeal of HIV criminalization laws, bodily autonomy, and social determinants of equity. She is a certified NMAC leadership and development trainer, and she is the chairperson of Women of Color Rise Up. It is definitely my pleasure to welcome them both into the space and thank them for making all of this possible.
Thank you so much, Bridget, for that warm welcome. And it is my pleasure to be here today. And I want to welcome everyone to this National Town Hall, Life Beyond HIV. We're delighted to have you all here today, and we extend our heartfelt thanks to everyone for participating in this virtual event. We would also like to express a deep appreciation to the entire National Host Committee for their unwavering commitment and dedication. Your willingness to meet bi-weekly and collaborate on developing this event demonstrates a profound understanding of the challenges faced by HIV survivors. By coming together, we have exemplified the power of unity and the strength that lies within a collective effort. Often it can feel as though our lives are defined and limited because of our statuses and experiences with HIV. But today, through this National Town Hall, we'll discuss what it means to live beyond the diagnosis and create a future full of promise and possibility. Thank you.
Thank you, Cecilia. I have had such a nice time working with you on this project. I want to encourage anybody who might be listening and watching that activism and participation and volunteerism is at the very heart of what all of us do, and we invite any of you to participate and get involved with the Reunion Project in any way you like, because you're going to meet other people that inspire you, and you're going to make new friends, like I have been able to do with Cecilia during this process. So thank you for that. Our theme today, creating a life beyond HIV, is something that's been on our minds a lot. We had a lot of fun discussing this. Of course, how you create a life beyond HIV so that we get out of kind of our HIV silo and look at life beyond simply our diagnosis depends, of course, on privilege, on resources, and who we are, where we're from, and how we're able to do that. So we know that it's going to differ by person and what their life circumstances may be. I think that you'll find through the presentations and the various panelists that we have today that we're providing as best we can a broad spectrum of experience of people who are able to create those lives beyond HIV or who are not and are struggling with that and trying to figure out the best way to do it. So we're very excited about the program today, Creating a Life Beyond HIV. And thank you as well to all of our committee members and to Cecilia. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. I got to remember to take myself off of mute. So taking a look here, we have the Reunion Project National Virtual Town Host Committee. As you can see, there are a lot of amazing advocates and activists here on this list, some of whom will be speaking today. We have Portia Dees, Timothy Hamilton, Jean Hernandez, Jeff Taylor, Hishi Zinman, Matt Sharp, AJ Scruggs, Butch McKay, Olga Irwin, Robin Webb, and Tammy McKinney. These are some of the amazing people that contribute to the WELL Project. And I saw someone in the chat said that they're rock stars. They absolutely are rock stars. And we appreciate all of the work that they do and everything that they put into. As most of you know, HIV work is not easy and it's hard work as much as it is hard work. So we appreciate their hearts and being involved in this project. And so right now, I'm going to turn it over to one of the most, we have our national roll call. Some of you have already done so, but go ahead and tell us in the chat, are you a long-term survivor? If you're newly diagnosed, let us know so that we can support you. Tell us where you're joining from. We definitely want to see who's out there. And I was talking about it kind of in the beginning, but we literally have people from all over the country in here. We have Chicago, Boulder, Colorado. I see Birmingham, Alabama. I'm in Palm Springs in California. There is Greenville, Mississippi going on. A lot of folks from Chicago here, which I love. New Jersey, I see New Jersey in the chat. There's Atlanta popping in. Somebody has a birthday going on. Happy birthday, Cecilia. There is Philadelphia's in the chat, has shown up. I love Philly folks. One of my favorite artists is from there, Jill Scott. There's Phoenix, Dallas. It's amazing to see all of you here. And I think it speaks to the HIV community about how we come together and we manage to find each other and we manage to find spaces where we can love on and support each other. So again, thank you so much for being here. Like I said at the top of the webinar, please use the chat often, communicate, ask questions, give opinions, be involved. This webinar is for us. It's about creating a life. Yes. I thought I heard someone come in. It's about creating a life after HIV. And so part of that is community. A huge part of that is community. And so as a community, let's come together and talk about it. And I think we're ready to turn it over to our grounding exercise. So it is my pleasure to introduce Heather O'Connor. I love her. If you don't know her, you should get to know her. She's an amazing individual. Heather is the communications coordinator for the Reunion Project and for Rock for Aging Center, and she's a great person. So Heather, please go ahead and get us settled and going.
Hello, everyone. I am so incredibly honored to be here with you today and everyone who has put so much work into this event. I just want to take a moment. We're all excited for the content that we're about to take in, to just be for a moment. And I'd like everyone to close their eyes. And as you're closing your eyes, I want you to start at the very top of your head and just do a mental scan of your body, down to your forehead, your eyes, your nose, and your mouth. And I want you to notice anywhere that you feel tension or pain, or it just feels uncomfortable, or maybe that spot on your body just needs a little more love. Continue down the neck, the shoulders, your sternum, your stomach, down to your hips, your legs, and your feet. And if you've identified any of these areas where you're feeling pain, I want you to go ahead and take your hand and just place that on the area where you feel pain. And we're just going to breathe together. And as we breathe, I want you to think about inhaling, and we're going to send the positive energy, the new life, the release into that area of our body. And as we exhale, I want you to let go of any unnecessary tension that you're holding that is not serving you right now. So go ahead and take a big inhale into that area that you've identified. And exhale, releasing that tension. Taking an inhale. And exhale. Releasing that tension. Once more, again, we're going to inhale. And exhale. Letting that energy go that's not serving you. And go ahead and slowly open your eyes. I want you to go ahead and bring some awareness to your body by taking your fingertips, and I just want you to tap, starting with your head, just gentle taps on your head, moving down to your face. This is going to wake up the proprioceptors in your body, which allow you to identify where your body is in space. And where we need to be right now is exactly where we are in this webinar, in this safe space together with each other as a family. And take that tapping down to your neck and your shoulders, down your torso, and to your legs if that's available to you. If it's not, just find a new area you haven't explored before and go ahead and give it a tap and wake it up. Bringing our presence here, we're ready to take in the information we're about to receive. Good. And go ahead and take your right hand and place it on your shoulder. Extend your left arm out. And I want you to just brush, like you're brushing something off of your arm. And I want you to imagine that you're just letting that energy go that's not serving you, any anxieties that you have, any stress, any deadlines that you have. We're not worried about those right now. We're just existing in this space together. And go ahead and go to the other side and brushing that off. Letting it go, all of that negative energy. We're just here and we're just simply existing together in this space. Beautiful. And then go ahead and take your left arm up above your head, like you're wearing an earphone on your left ear, and reach up and over, stretching that side body and opening up those intercostal muscles, creating length in the rib cage. Take a big breath here. Inhale, expand the rib cage. Exhale, releasing that breath, releasing any unnecessary energy. And big inhale again. And exhale, releasing. Go ahead and do the other side. Give the other side some love too. Arm up like you're wearing your right arm as a headphone and reaching up and over, extending the right side of those ribs, lengthening those muscles, creating space between your ribs. Take a big inhale here. Beautiful. You're doing great. And exhale. And an inhale in. And exhale. Beautiful. Returning center. I want you to take your two hands, place them together in a prayer position, and interlace your fingertips like you're holding your own hand. Go ahead and place those hands at the base of your skull, where your skull connects to the top of your neck, the very top of your cervical spine, like you're placing a pillow behind your head. I want you to dip your nose towards your chest. as you gently press down on the back of your skull, creating length in the back of the cervical spine and between the vertebra, growing up towards the sky, imagining your torso rooted down into your chair like a tree trunk as you're growing upwards. You can put a gentle pressure if you want to press against your hands with your head, doing some active releasing, some active stretching. Big inhale here. And exhale, releasing, seeing if you can deepen that stretch a little bit if that's available to you. Big inhale here. And exhale, releasing. Beautiful. Go ahead and release that head center. And then we're going to take our right hand to the left side of our head, crossing over. Go ahead and take your head, your right ear towards your right shoulder, creating length on the left side of that neck, where your neck is connecting to your shoulder, opening that clavicle joint, lengthening those muscles. Take a big inhale here. And exhale. Release. You can choose to have your eyes opened or closed, whatever feels best for you. Big inhale here. Exhale, releasing that tension. Beautiful. Lengthening center. We're going to give some love to the other side, taking that left hand to the right ear, allowing the head to fall, the left ear to fall towards the left shoulder, creating length there. And big inhale here. Exhale, opening up the right clavicle, creating space between the neck and the shoulder. Big inhale. And exhale. And returning center. Beautiful. One more time. I want you to think about growing up towards the sky through the top of the head and rooted down into your chair and your trunk and just growing as tall as you can in your spine. Go ahead and close your eyes once more, and we're just going to breathe together, existing in the space together, existing in the now, right here, right now, this experience, this moment. Big inhale. Exhale. Releasing that tension, releasing the worries, whatever's not serving you right now. Big inhale. And exhale. Releasing, feeling yourself becoming lighter. Big inhale. This is our last one together. And go ahead and exhale. Anything that's keeping you from being right here in this moment right now. And I want everyone to open their eyes gently. And I want everyone to enjoy their time here together with everyone, all together as a National Alliance of Long-Term Survivors and the superheroes and super sheroes and super theros that we are today. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful, beautiful webinar.
That was amazing. Didn't I tell you she was great? Thank you so much, Heather. Like literally, thank you for centering the space and making it a peaceful place. We are going to be together for a while today. And so I just want to remind you, take bio breaks as you need, get a drink of water, but absolutely stay with us for the whole program. There is a ton of good information that is going to happen here. And we want you to be a part of it for the whole ride. So my pleasure right now is to introduce our first panel of dynamic speakers. So first off, we have Vince Chrysostomo. I asked it right before the webinar, and of course I messed it up. My apologies. Vince is a queer Chamorro, and that is not a curse word. It means that he's Pacific Islander. He's a long-term HIV/AIDS survivor who is now 61 years of age. He strongly believes in health care to all and social justice equity to people of every sexual identity, HIV status, gender, race, and age. having dedicated over 30 years to HIV and AIDS activism and LGBTQ communities at international, regional, national, and grassroots levels. Currently, he is the Director of Aging Services at San Francisco AIDS Foundation. And then along with him, we have Paul Aguilar. Paul is a fourth-generation native San Franciscan. Diagnosed at the age of 25 in 1988, he was told he wouldn't live to see 30, and that was over 30 years ago. I love this. Self-described as an advocate, activist, author, and artist, Paul reminds those of the LGBTQ+ community the importance of telling our individual stories and not to forget the words of the late Harvey Milk. Rights are only won by those who make their voices heard. Currently, Paul also works in aging services at the San Francisco AIDS Foundation. Welcome into the space. Please share with us.
Oh, thank you.
Are you on mute?
No, we're not on mute. Are we on mute? No, we're not on mute.
That might come later.
It's an honor to be here. I was really surprised when Mark reached out and asked us to be a part of this. It was a little scary, actually, because he said he was stalking us on Facebook. That was a little concerning. My name's Paul. This is Vince. Our journey. I don't know. You start.
No, you start.
No, you start. You're older.
No, you start.
Where do I start? So life without HIV is hard for me to actually have that because those first reports from the CDC came out 2 weeks before my 18th birthday. And so that's been my whole life. My whole adult life has been around HIV and AIDS. And so finding that part of my life that isn't directed by that can really be a challenge because almost everything I do is somehow connected to HIV and AIDS. But we find ways to mitigate that, right?
Yeah.
Trying to find life and enjoy life. One of the things that I think is really important is setting aside time to do things that aren't necessarily specific to HIV. Like one of the things I did during COVID was I rediscovered the artist that I left back at 19 years old when, all of my friends were dying and I had to learn marketable skills. That's, of course, my parents' voice in my head. And so I stopped pursuing art until COVID hit. And I ended up sheltering in place with my parents, which I don't recommend for anyone. And to find ways to utilize my time, I had ordered some drawing pencils on Amazon. And as soon as they came and I picked them up, I started drawing and I was like, oh, why haven't I been doing this these last 40 years? So those are the kinds of things that I try to do that aren't, I don't know. It's a challenge. How do we do it? I'm asking you. You.
Me?
Yeah, you.
Well, the first time, in September 2020, I was promoted to Director of HIV and Aging. And the first thing I did was I took HIV out of the department and I created the Department of Aging Services. Because in my opinion, if it's the HIV you want to focus on, there's all kinds of services. But what we don't have is something that looks at us and how we age and how do we age gracefully. And so I have been very lucky. For me personally, I tested positive in New York. And the first groups that I was subjected to, I was in my 20s. And I was also told I wouldn't live to see 30. And I found the HIV groups to be really depressing and predominantly white. So I expanded beyond that and I went to different groups where people were living with life-threatening conditions. And that's where I really learned things about how, if you look at your, whatever you want to call it, HIV or comorbidity, and make it big and you become small, then that's going to take over your life. And so for me, it was always about the other things. You know, I remember when I was told I was HIV positive, the first thing I thought was, oh my God, that means I have to come out to my parents, which I successfully avoided for 3 or 4 years. So it's been about, no, 3, 4 years, like a decade practically. So, you know, so for me, it was always about the other things. I think for most, we were only called people of color now. Now it's BIPOC, but for most people of color of our generation, HIV was just one of the many things. And even when we came back, when I started this program, when we talked about being a long-term survivor, many people didn't relate to that because it's like, I've been surviving life. And so for me, you know, what I do is I focus on the relationships. I focus on a lot of the intersectionalities that HIV may impact, and like home, community, friends. Also, you know, being a lot of my work has been in the Asian Pacific Islander community. We were probably the community that was the least impacted by HIV in terms of numbers. I think at one point we had like 25% of the cases. So we always had other things, you know, trying to be included in spaces. Like I have, you know, I'm Pacific Islander, which was talked about earlier, and I've often been told I'm not Asian enough. So I have to correct people and say, you know what, I'm a Pacific Islander. And then people think I'm Filipino. And so I used to use as an icebreaker that my name is Vince Crisostomo. This is where we had the pronoun thing. And I'm not Filipino. And all the Filipinos would get like, what's wrong with being Filipino? And I'd be like, I'm not. And so it's just, you know, looking at different parts of my identity. And then, you know, like one of the things that when our community started coming together, you know, was talking about envisioning the future that we never imagined or dreamed. I'm like, well, we better start imagining it, because if we're going to live to be 80, we need to start thinking about, you know, what it is that we want in life. And, you know, one of the things that we've recently introduced into our menu of services here is deaf doula work, where you can talk about your legacy. What is the life that you want to live? And what is it that you want to leave behind? For me, part of that has been, what is the story you want to tell? You know, some of our stories, as wonderful as they are, they're filled with a lot of depressing things. And if we focus on the depressing things, you're going to be depressed. You're going to feel sad, and it's very hard to kind of vibrate out of that. And so I try to find purpose beyond present circumstances. And the one time where I almost gave into the fact that HIV and AIDS was more powerful than me was COVID. I had just won a lottery for a house that I now own. And I remember the loan agent called me and he said, Vince, we need to think about your loan. I'm like going, I can't think about that. You know, it's like there's an epidemic out there and I might not have a job in 3 months on this, and it felt like my 20s all over again. And then I'm going to get a little choked up here. He told me, straight cis man, Vince, if your experience with HIV and AIDS has taught you anything, it's that you will get through this. We will get through this. Where do you want to be when this is done? You need to make choices that are optimistic. Optimism breeds hope, and that's what we all need. And I thought about that. And so I kind of just started to reverse everything. And, you know, to me now, HIV is just one of the many things that's in my life. You know, one of the things, like with Paul, when he first came into my life, I was like, which was actually probably about 20 something years ago, he used to come to this club that I used to do outreach at. And he told me, you wouldn't give me the time of day. And I'm like, I still might not, but anyway.
As long as you give me a picture.
Yeah, but I was just like, but over time we became friends, and it wasn't just HIV. I mean, we went to women's marches, we supported the trans community, we did all this stuff. And, you know, I recently went on a trip with somebody, and the person was really annoying, and they're a good friend of mine. I just never traveled with them before. I spent more than, you know, and I thought, what's missing from this? And I was like, Paul. You know, Paul is like, we go out and we do things, we spend all this time together, and very little of it has to do with around HIV.
Basically, we're just judging what people are wearing most of the time.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And so I sent him a picture of this thing that I said, and I think I wrote, the only thing missing is you, or something happened like that. And then I thought, oh, that's weird. But, you it's what you focus on. I think that and I've just been very lucky. I have so much gratitude. Um, in the places that I've lived, and actually working with the foundation, I have had a lot of resources that I could pour into the community to try to get people to think about these things. And one of the things was I went to Paul about a year and a half ago and I said, hey, there's this workforce training thing that's happening. What I think we can do, and I'm not sure how this is going to work, but it's like, you can train with us for like 3 or 4 months. I think 2 months, and we extended it to 4. And at the end, the idea is that you can write your own job description. You can write your job description. That's how we came up with long-term survivor community liaison. And I said, our community needs heroes. And I think that you could be one of those. And he just took it and ran with it. He was the only one that was able to work with the agency that we partnered with on this. And we're hoping to bring on 4 more. But the idea for me is that, our people, a lot of them, and most seniors, you slip into isolation at some point for whatever reason. So my thought is always, what are the things that are going to bring them out? What are the tickets that we can do? So it's providing a great meal. When you talk about support groups and they're going to feed you lunch, make sure it's a little colorful, because I've heard from a lot of folks, it's like, it takes us 2 hours public transportation, one of our taxi scripts to get to this, and they give us bread and water. So we give them a little more than that. And then we also always order extra so they can take some home. But really, I do focus a lot. In the 90s, I trained people living with HIV to speak and their stories. And so many of the people that have survived that time and are thriving now, I will tell them, this is a story that needs to be told. Yes, you could have died a homeless, drug addicted prostitute, but you didn't. Now you're putting your life together, and by doing that, I hope we're setting the tone. Like, I feel that in HIV, we revolutionized the healthcare system, and I feel that we also need to revolutionize the aging system. I think we're the only generation that lived most of our life knowing that we could die at any minute. I mean, I was told at 28 I wouldn't make it to C30. I'm now 62. Oh yeah, I guess I edited a year out of my bio earlier. But, and yeah, I told Paul I wanted to go first because I can talk a lot and I didn't want to take all the time, but why don't you say a few things and I'll just interrupt.
Oh, you mean like I usually do you?
Yeah.
Okay, we're switching the roles. All right. So here's the thing. While it's impossible to divorce HIV and AIDS from my life completely, it can't be my total focus. So I remember when we reconnected in 2014, and that was at one of the Honoring Our Experience retreats. And they have the No Talent show. And I never perform in those. Did I do it that time either? Oh yeah, I did. It was the shoes. Hold on. Oh God. The red shoes. Anyway, Vince started singing Rainbow Connection. Now, that's a song that meant a lot to me because when that movie first came out, there was a young 17-year-old Down syndrome child that I used to take care of, and that was like his favorite song. This is a kid who wasn't supposed to live past 6, but he made it to like 20-something years old before he passed away. But it was that connection to that song. I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then we found out we had known each other years before. And we started seeing each other at events. And I had just come back to San Francisco, and it was a totally different city than the one I had grown up in. I did not recognize this city whatsoever. The dot boom, the dot bomb, all of it. And I was trying to meet people. And Vince is like, well, if you're trying to meet men, you should come to the HIV Advocacy Network. And I met men, not the way I wanted to, but what that began in me was getting more involved in stuff outside of me and working with other people on similar goals. What I've learned is that I stay young by working with young people. Because my 20s were like a blur because I was supposed to be dead. So I'm reliving them now in my 60s. I told Vince I didn't want that job. I really didn't want a job. I didn't want to start a new career at 60 years old. I'm supposed to be laying by a pool, and Carlos is supposed to be bringing me drinks with umbrellas in them. That is where I'm supposed to be at 60. Here I am, down this path, which has been a hell of a lot of fun. I was lifetime Grand Marshal in this year's San Francisco Pride. Whoever would have thought that? Ever. This one did it, though. I enjoy, how do I say this? I always try to find the fun in a situation. So even though HIV can be depressing and we have all these issues we have to deal with, I mean, how many people can say they're 3 pandemics strong in this room? I can. Can you? I can.
That should be a poll. Let's see.
Right? How many can say they're 3 pandemics strong? That's, when monkeypox hit, I'm like, bring it on. Come on. We've already been through 2 pandemics. Bring another one on. Come on. We can take care of this. We're strong. We're resilient. I took a break. I mean, I got my college degree at 30 years old after going into drug and alcohol treatment. Because when 30 hit and I didn't die, I knew I had to make a change because I was supposed to be dead at 30 and I couldn't continue that way. And I discovered there was this thing called development, which was basically people getting paid to stuff envelopes like I was doing for doing fundraising. But I had to stop after a while because at the height of the pandemic, there were 87 AIDS organizations in San Francisco all competing for the same pot of money, and I couldn't deal with that stress. So I dropped out of HIV and I went and I got married and I raised kids. Whoever thought I'd be a dad, but there I was. All of a sudden, I was a stepdad to teenagers. God, that'll change your life in a heartbeat. You put them to bed at 12 and at 13, they wake up with speaking a different language with no owner's manual. Who knew? My mother got her wish. I got kids just like me. Boy, did I. But that was, and again, that was still colored by HIV because my ex-husband was also HIV positive. That's how we met. But our life extended beyond that, and I got to help raise these 2 amazing young men. And then we got divorced after they moved out. That happens. That's part of life. And so that's what brought me back to San Francisco. Or I left San Francisco for 2 years and came back, and that's when we reconnected. It's like taking our own advice. So we are a social engagement program for long-term survivors. And we try to provide them with opportunities and events that are different and unique and experiential. And wouldn't I be hypocritical if I didn't do that with my own life? Finding things that are outside of just work. It's all going to be connected to HIV no matter what. Everything I do is going to be connected to that because that's my entire life. But it doesn't have to be the sole focus. We can find ways to integrate that. We just did this amazing workshop, this theater workshop with some of our long-term survivors. And it was 12 weeks of writing prompts. And we found this amazing director who threw that all in and made this most powerful script out of these 30 writings.
He made it a point because younger people, HIV did not have the impact on their lives that it did on ours. He made it a point to expand some of the themes. And some of the most powerful things were just the experiences people had in relationships. There was a poem called I Unlove You. And it was getting over just a relationship that they had been hurt in. And I thought, wow, that's really, incredible. How many of us live our lives, in that pain? And so a lot of my work, I feel, is just creating opportunities and like a menu of things that people can choose from. We try to give people options so that, we have 3 or 4 things happening. What do you want to do? You don't have to go to everything. It's up to you. For myself, I have friends where HIV is just not a big part and they don't even want to talk about it. And some people would find that offensive. But I'm like, I have other spaces where I can talk about HIV, and like my API community, we do a lot of work around gender. I recently went from identifying as gay to queer because I realized, no matter what, like I'm not the best gay that I could possibly be. I always feel a little off. My pronouns are he, him, but I always feel a little off, man. And I thought it just hit me. I'm queer. Like I don't have to subscribe to this binary thing that has ruled my life, and determined what choices I make around how I dress and my career. So, it's very liberating, and you get that from hanging out with young people because, they did not create the world that they're living in. We did, and some of them take issues with some of the stuff that we did. But I also realized when I was 24, nobody gave me these things because people were dying. And so I just have wonderful lunches and dinners, and these kids are like could be my grandchildren. If I went that route, and it's just incredible to hear their stories and where I do see hope and where I do see change and the work that I've done is that these young folks lift each other up to be the best that they can be. I mean, in our world and in my time, we had these AIDS divas who, were not very nice to each other. Thankfully, most of them left the field. Oh, I can't believe I just said that. Edit that out of the recording, please. But those of us who are here, I really do feel that, we owe it to ourselves for all those who are not here to live a life that you'll be proud of.
We're fortunate that we're in San Francisco. It's resource rich. And not just with HIV, though. There are issues that this city has, which is kind of how I've expanded my focus on it was all HIV, but now, I became part of the Milk Club and I got politically active because there are other issues other than HIV and long-term survivors. Believe it or not, there are. And I can take the skills that I've learned in dealing with my HIV and the government and all the things that we've done over the 40 years as a community and apply those lessons to other issues within the community that aren't HIV that people can benefit from. So that's one way I get out of it. I kind of did this. I've done this with HIV recently, and I did it with COVID too. When we were sheltered in place, I had a no news day. Like 1 day a week, no news, got to go on TV about just no news at all. I didn't want to hear it. I was in a room where it was on. It was really healthy. So I try to do that like on my days off, except for my therapy. It's a non-HIV day. I go out and I play with my camera. I'll bring my sketchbook. I'll go and, go to the park. I'll call him up and make him take me to lunch because I'm hungry and he's got my money. He's my boss. Just something that's not totally focused on, even remotely focused with HIV.
When, I think it was like maybe spring of 2021 when they told me I was going to get some staff other than me and my program manager. We did interviews and I got 6 really stellar candidates. And then there was a 7th candidate we were going to interview.
And then there was me.
You came later. But, and I thought one of them dropped out and my program manager, Dusty, said, Vince, I really think we need to interview this person. And I'm like, Dusty, it's like we've gone through this period, but then we did. And one of the questions I asked people were like, what is the world that you want to age into? And what are you doing now to get there? And, people gave me pat answers or whatever. And one person, the last person we interviewed, said, I need to think about this. No one has ever asked me that. So anyway, they got the job because I wanted someone who was able to think about that. So anyway, when the time came for the hires, I said, Dusty, if we want to grow the program, we hire this way. If we want to just stay the same, we hire this way. What do we do? And he goes, we grow the program. I said, okay, so can you tell your friend that applied that he's not getting the job? Because I think he's going to be pretty upset. And we went with the 2 other hires. And, that was my question to them. And then Ebony, I'm going to call you out because you're here. But by another stroke of luck, Ebony moved to San Francisco, and I asked her, what did you feel passionate about? She talked about Mothers of the Movement, and she wanted to create an intergenerational program where we link the Mothers of the Movement with younger Black women. The foundation has been around for 40 years, and we have never served cis Black women. So I said, you go to it. And it's one of our crown jewels, and she'll be presenting at USCA to talk about that work. But in the 40-year history of the foundation, we've never served cis Black women. We're doing intergenerational work with trans. We have transgender nonconforming. We're bringing them together with older trans folks. So it's been pretty incredible. I just feel really, really blessed. And I think we're about to go into Q&A, but I just want to thank Paul, because when I went to him and I presented my vision for the program, and he really was not keen to do it, I asked him to trust me, and he did. And he somehow, was able to pull all of us together. And last night we had a dinner, It's a Wrap, where we wrapped up Pride, and people kept coming up to me and telling me how great it was to see Paul so happy because it made them so happy. And I thought, you know what? You're just happy because you're happy, because we have this. It's not because of Paul, because he's not always that happy. And if he is, I have to check what he's been doing. Anyway.
CBDs, honey, CBDs.
CBDs. So anyway, we'll leave it at that. And I want to give Paul the last word, because even if I didn't give him the last word, he'd probably take it anyway.
I always do.
I know. So it's your time.
I'm not sure we addressed what you really wanted to talk about, living a life not filled with HIV, because we're so enmeshed in it. But it's a conscious effort, because the work that we all do is a work from our heart. It's definitely that kind of work. And I mean, we would do it until, well, here I am at 60, starting a new career, which I didn't want. So that explains it all. The bottom line is when I see, again, it's taking my own advice that I give clients. When they get overwhelmed, I tell them you need to focus on something else. You need to go do something that, okay, quick story. Ex-husband worked on Broadway, did Cats in Germany, in Vienna, actually, for a year. And there was this dresser, this little old lady. And every day she would go out to lunch and she'd come back and she had this fresh flower she put on her desk. And he asked her about it. And she said, every day I go out, she had been through World War II, the whole bit, the wall, the Berlin Wall, all of that. She said, it's very important that every day when she goes out to have lunch, that she buys this flower for her soul. This one thing that is for her and only her, that she does for herself, that makes her feel special. And so that was the flower for her soul. Mm-hmm. So I encourage everyone every day to go out and buy a flower for your soul, whatever that is. If it's getting a mani-pedi, if it's a facial, if it's something you like to eat, of course not overindulgent, or just take a walk, buy a flower for your soul. That's when you're loving yourself for who you are, whatever that is, and it supersedes everything. And without that, then we can get caught up in the daily stuff. But that one conscious thing that you do for yourself, that's
beautiful. I love that. I think that is.
I just want to also just say one thing, and that's to cultivate relationships that feed you. At this point in our lives, if people annoy you, cut them out of your life. Depending on who they are, think about it and think about what you'd be losing. Okay, he's leaving, so I'll do the Q&A. But really and truly, I mean, I just, the friendship that I have with Paul and Harry, who's also on this, I mean, that's really the blessing that I feel are in my life. So thank you all.
Absolutely, thank you. And you know what? It's not an easy thing to share your life with people. And so I appreciate the fact that you guys have done that. You've shared a little bit of yourselves and some of your story, and your pictures were great, by the way. I love those. There were a couple of things that occurred to me while I was listening to you guys speak. And so I just have a couple questions. And the first one is for Paul. And you talked about how you've been living with HIV for your entire adulthood. And I think that's true for a lot of long-term survivors. I definitely know it's true for our lifetime survivors, who we're going to hear from a little bit later. But knowing that you were told you weren't going to be here, and looking back at your life as it is now, what's the biggest lesson about, not about HIV, but the biggest lesson about life that you've learned in this time
Nothing's
period?
forever. Nothing's forever. Everything changes. There's a beginning, like, the biggest lesson, it's actually something I had to teach my youngest or oldest stepson, who realized that his first substance use disorder was sugar, because every time he felt bad, he went for sugar. And we were having this conversation, and he was 14. And I said to him, nothing's forever. You feel bad, but that's not going to last forever. Are there people who are always forever happy or always forever sad? No, because those things change. And so life changes, and you just have to kind of be patient sometimes, and sometimes it's a real struggle, but eventually your situations will change. For the better or worse, who knows? But they'll change. Nothing is like this constant forever.
Can I actually answer that question too? Because one of the big things I learned early on, it's like we were told we were going to live till we were 30. So all this time I was thinking, I'm dying. So when I first started getting appointed to advocacy positions, I would say things that were considered outrageous because I was dying and I thought I could do it. After about 5 years of this, when I was still living, I thought I need to be more accountable. And so my thing around that, my lesson is that do and say things because you feel it, because it's important to you, not because you think you're dying and you just need to get, it's like that's just an excuse, but do it because you feel it.
It's like that meme of that old lady. I've gotten to the age where in my head I go, I probably shouldn't say this. And then I go, oh, what the hell? Let's see what happens.
Okay, sorry. I know you didn't direct that to me, but.
No, I actually appreciate that. Accountability is one of the words that I really love. And I also like that there's kind of an ebb and flow to accountability, because as you mature, the way that you hold yourself accountable changes. Or don't, the way that you don't, that you haven't chosen in the past to hold yourself accountable. So actually, I really appreciate that answer. Thank you. And then Vince, the question that came up for me, you said you took HIV out of the title. I love that, because I love any kind of instance where we take the power back from HIV. I love it. So my question is, what other ways, like easy ways, can you give suggestions? Can you give people to take the power back from HIV out of their life?
Yeah, you just like, what do you feel important about? Like, so for me, our department focuses on things like gender. Like, I actually call it the things that I felt we didn't get right in the first 40 years of the epidemic. So things around race, things about, gender, race, health equity. I still believe that we need to fight for universal health care in this country, because as long as, health and profits are put before people, we're always going to be at despair. And so that's how I do it. It's just like I just focus on other things, what I guess they call now intersectionalities of the epidemic, and how does that impact people's lives, and understand that what worked when we were younger doesn't always work now. A lot of language, a lot of terms, and so you find out what's happening and how do you cultivate the power in that. And the other piece is, do what cultivates joy. Like, joy to me is a form of resistance. As long as you can find joy and pleasure, the other side doesn't win. And so when it push comes to shove, what's going to make you happy? And honestly, at our ages, you shouldn't really care what anybody thinks anymore.
I don't.
Except yourself.
Never have.
And that's something I tell young people and their parents now. It's like, you know what? Teach them that the only thing that's important is what they think about themselves, not what other people try to tell them, not what they should be doing. Should is not a good word in most cases.
Should is a terrible word. I also, like, for example, like I said with COVID, taking that power back is pursuing something that I enjoyed, that I forgot I had enjoyed, or getting involved in something outside of HIV in my community. I joined a local, the Harvey Milk Democratic Club because I align with them. And so I was getting involved in other things outside of the HIV. Finding your joy. Yeah. Cultivating your joy. It's like, if I'm not happy, then what is it that's what is it that's causing that? And what do I need to do differently? And be willing to make those, be willing to, as my counselor said when I graduated Acceptance Place, 100 million years ago, you need to stay uncomfortable. Now, nobody knew what he meant, but I knew what he meant. He meant I need to challenge myself all the time. I can't just sit there and be complacent. I have to try new things. And if I don't like it, then okay. But until I try it, I'm not going to know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If you're
being
not enjoying
uncomfortable.
if you're
Sorry,
not
go
enjoying
ahead.
our movement work, then leave, or write a check or do something, you can always come back later. It's like, we don't need to be martyrs. It's like people,
Right.
talk about how hard, Paul, we don't have that much time. People, you only have so much time. And if you're not enjoying it, you actually are more of a hindrance, because every time people see you come, like, oh my God, here comes that guy again. It's or whoever it's going to be. But yeah, so I mean, just do what brings you joy. And if you don't know what brings you joy, then figure it out. Right?
Yes. There are some folks in the chat that are talking about how joy is resistance and zooming in on other issues. And I think those are important. There's a couple of other things in the chat that I want to call out to your attention. Someone asks if you could share some of the writing prompts from the theater workshop, which I thought was an amazing idea.
I actually have them listed if I can find them. Where are they?
Okay, you go find them and I'll keep talking.
You keep talking. Good, because you're good.
Maybe we can share them with the Reunion Project, and they can make them
then they can send them out.
Absolutely, because I think I find writing to be a terrific way to sometimes when I write, I think I'm talking to myself, but I'm actually helping other people and vice versa. And so writing and theater and art, all of the things that you guys talked about are great ways for us to be outside of just HIV.
We're hoping to do the same workshop with Ebony's program at some point, where our cis Black women and mothers of the movement, the intergenerational folks, will be able to kind of do their stories. And I'm hoping that my dream for that would be this incredible tapestry of our community here for both San Francisco, the East Bay, and the Bay Area, where we're able to weave all these stories together.
Yeah, one of the things that you said that, because we're almost out of time, but I do want to call attention to one of the things that you guys have said you've said it in a subtle way that maybe is not so obvious, is talking about bridging the gap between long-term survivors and older people and some of the younger folks, and that young folks keep you young. I believe that too. I was diagnosed at 40. And I've been living with HIV for 10 years now. So I'm kind of on the cusp in the middle. When I was first diagnosed, I had a lot of long-term survivors tell me that I was still a baby. But my back and my knees didn't feel like I was a baby. And I firmly believe that, young folks need to be aware of the history of HIV and the struggles and how far we've come. And so folks like you, by sharing your stories, are able to keep that alive, and it kind of completes the cycle of community, right? We're always building each other up. There are new folks replacing us as advocates and activists, and all of that is important.
Always bring one forward.
I've been trying to train my replacements for years, and I'm still here. I'm like, every time I leave the field.
Well, we don't want you to go anywhere.
Irreplaceable, Vince. It's because you're irreplaceable.
Okay, we interrupted you. Sorry.
Exactly. Well, both of you are irreplaceable. I appreciate the time, and I appreciate the conversation with you. So thank you so much.
Can I say one more thing before you sign out?
He's going to say it anyway. So
it's just like one of the things that I was told when I was in New York. I wanted to be an artist, and all those artists were really stuck up and snotty. And I was at a party one time, and we were talking about, and they asked me what was the medium that I worked in, and I said life. And then somebody said, one of the greatest forms of art is a life that is well lived. And so for today's woman, I want to add that, HIV is just a tool that you have to create your art. It doesn't have to be the focus.
Yes, absolutely. That is a great message to end with. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it so much. I hope to be in the same space with you again at some
Come,
time.
we'll create a workshop and it'll just be free. We're gonna do something with Mark in the fall.
Excellent.
And so it's an open invitation. If you're coming, let us know and we'll create something so you can, maybe charge it to your agencies or whatever.
Terrific. All right. Well, thank you,
Sam, this is
guys.
fun.
Appreciate you.
Thanks.
So we're going to keep things pushing. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I do, and you caught all of the little nuggets. It seems like you guys did, because I see the chat going on, and I appreciate you guys using the chat. We're going to move on to our second panel. And this panel is, I think there's a lot of insights to be gained here. There is a lifetime survivor, which I alluded to back in the first panel. So let's introduce, we have Miss Portia Dees, who will be here with us. Portia is a native of San Bernardino, California, and a graduate of the University of California, Riverside. She describes herself as a lifetime survivor because she's lived with HIV her entire life. She's currently the chair of the Verticals Special Interest Group for the National HIV and Aging Advocacy Network, and is pursuing an MSW at Azusa Pacific University. Educating people on the topic of HIV and public speaking has become her calling. Welcome to Portia. We have Atcham Jeremiah Howard. He is the founder of DC Trans Men Rising. He's an advocate, mentor, minister, humanitarian, father figure, and so much more. And he continues the fight to erase HIV in the transgender community. His quote is, "My life is so much bigger and greater than me. I will continue to do what I'm called to do until I don't have any breath left." That's a powerful statement. Amen. And that is, which is to continue to fight for what's right. So welcome to Atcham. We have Barb Cardell. I love Barb. Barb is the training director for the Positive Women's Network USA, a member of the US People Living with HIV Caucus, the policy chair for the Colorado Organizations and Individuals Responding to HIV/AIDS, and a governor-appointed member of the statewide Colorado Alliance for HIV Care, Prevention, and Treatment. Openly living with HIV for the last 29 years in Boulder, Colorado, Barb's hobbies and passions include speaking truth to power, dismantling racism, and sharing her opinions even when they're unsolicited. My kind of person. And then we also have Dr. Joyce Turner, founder and CEO of Aspirations, a nonprofit faith-based community service organization, and founder and CEO of the Travelers Christ Academy, where she teaches grades K through 12. As a person who is thriving and living with HIV, with AIDS herself, she is taking her message from the pulpit to the public and has dedicated herself to educating, motivating, uplifting, supporting, and inspiring others with HIV/AIDS throughout the world. Yes, ma'am. I love this panel. It's very diverse. I'm super excited for you guys to have this conversation and us to get into the meat and bones. I'm gonna let y'all go ahead and get started chatting. Let's see what we get here. Portia, go ahead. You can start. Say something
okay.
to the folks.
So, I mean, I was just gonna answer the question of what I think we need, what's needed to live a life beyond HIV. And so the last time I spoke on it was the Denver Principle celebration, I talked about trauma-informed care. And, I feel like that's what's needed, not only to live a life beyond HIV, but also to make sure that we're continuing to move forward and incorporating those principles, those Denver principles that were set for us. And so trauma-informed care, I say, to incorporate that, I feel like is the term integrated healthcare comes to mind, which means incorporating mental health, that mental health aspect, along with our physical health care, our treatment. And so I think that mental health piece is key, because as a lifetime survivor, I am echoing some of the stuff that Paul and Vince was talking about. Like it's hard for me to think about living a life beyond HIV as well, because it's been my entire life. Like, I was born HIV and with HIV, HIV positive. So it's been a big part of my life since the day I was born. Like, especially when I was younger, before I turned 10 years old, and they introduced the art therapy, the life-saving art therapy that saved our lives. I got sick a whole lot, and I was in the hospital a whole lot. Like, I can't even tell you how many times I got pneumonia. And I also wasn't supposed to live to be 5. So, living a life beyond the HIV was literally something that my parents nor I didn't think I could do. And I want to say that as a child growing up with a chronic health condition, or just people who live with chronic health conditions, we're exposed to different kinds of trauma, that the normal population isn't exposed to, and just sharing a little bit of the things that I guess kept me able to thrive and to be resilient through the process, even as a child. My social workers at Children's Hospital, they kept me involved in many different like social events and camps, where I got to be around other people who were living with chronic health conditions.
Mhm.
And they now I can name those things. Like, why those things were so important is because they created safe spaces for us to
Yes.
escape the realities of the world and just come together and have fun and be us, and I
Yeah.
think that that's what's important, even with what you guys have done, Miss Wahida, in the Reunion Project today, with creating this safe space for us to come together and to just be us. And so we can, and that social connectedness piece for me has been like really key. And
Definitely.
this was a very trauma-informed event, because what Heather started off, how she grounded us and stuff at the beginning.
Yes.
And then lastly, I'll say this because I don't want to take up too much time, but then even as I got older and tried to, and went into middle school and high school, I talk about this all the time, and, began wanting to date and have sex. I experienced a lot of stigma. There's a
Mhm.
lot of stigma associated with our illness that we live with. And so trying to live a life beyond HIV and to find love and to, have a normal, healthy relationship and lifestyle, it was very hard. And the reality of it is this world, I think, is not really a lot of the times a safe space for us to just be us and to live. And so that social connectedness piece for me has always been what was needed and what's key. And I think
Yeah.
that no matter how far I go beyond the HIV world, I think that I'll always like make sure that I'm including that no matter what I do, my accomplishments outside of this work that we do, I'm gonna say I'm living with HIV, and to make sure I'm speaking out, and because I think that that's key, so that other people who are going through what we're going through can have that example to look up to and know that they're not alone, and that,
Yeah. You actually gave a lot of really good examples of life beyond HIV, and a lot of things that we deal with on a daily basis, the trauma of it all, the stigma of it all, the isolation of it all. And so I think that that's one of the reasons that it's so important to have such a diverse group to have these conversations. Barb, why don't you tell us what it means to build a life beyond HIV?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me here today. And thank you, Portia. I always just love listening to your stories and your experiences. So I've actually been thinking a lot about what life beyond HIV means to me and how that fits into my experience. I've now been living with HIV for 32 years, since 1991. And my experience has been really a journey to go from originally, before I was diagnosed, I actually was really a part of ACT UP Boston, doing the die-ins and things like that. And it was very empowering and wonderful. And then I was diagnosed and I bought into that shame and that guilt and the stigma, the internalized stigma especially. And it wasn't until really I came across the Denver Principles on its 10th anniversary in 1993 when I realized that I was allowing society's judgment to put me in a box, to silence me and to shame me. And I decided then and there that I was never going to be ashamed of a disease that I actually, given the structural barriers, the white supremacy, the cultural judgment and stigma that allow all of us to be vulnerable to acquiring HIV and tell us that because we acquire it, that we should have known better, done better, anything like that. I refuse to allow that to impact my life and refuse that to impact other people's lives if I can help and can engage. Because here's what life beyond HIV looks like to me. Our community is amazing. We are fierce and beautiful and strange and troubled, and we are all of the things. And we come together because we have oftentimes had the nonsense stripped away. When you're told, I was told that I had 4 years to live, and so I better get my affairs in order, and many of us had those conversations. All of a sudden, things that are not so important get put away. So when we start thinking about who has what and how much, and oh, I wish I had more of whatever, when you have 4 years to live and you better damn well become wise and who you're supposed to be in this journey of your life and try and accomplish that in 4 years, it strips away the things that aren't important. So life beyond HIV looks to me like everyone who is here in this conversation, everyone who's here even in the chat room, it looks like people who have decided that they are going to live the life that they want to live, how they choose to live it, to not allow federal partnerships, federal government, federal agencies, anyone else to determine how we show up and how we live and how we love and how we engage. Having that opportunity to step back and say, no, I do not buy into the fact that if somebody identifies as queer, that they are less than. If somebody is a trans individual or a gender diverse person, that they are less than. We don't buy into that as a community. We lift each other up because we know that we have all been told that we are less than, and we don't buy into that. And so, you know, I mean, so that to me is the living beyond HIV. The beyond HIV is what do we know that we need to do to engage to be our best selves? Because, and I'm just going to quote Wahida here, as what we know is that no one is coming to save us. And so as a community, we come together to save each other and to save ourselves, and to determine what programs are going to meet our needs, and to determine how our voices are heard and how people living with HIV are meaningfully involved. And this does harken back to the Denver Principles that's foundational, that inspire us to know that we can demand more, that we choose who speaks for us, and that we can also move into spaces with power as subject matter expertise. Because oftentimes HIV has stripped things away from us. It has stripped away our sense of self-respect and our dignity. It has stripped away our sense of being able to complete a college education or to go for a PhD, or to go for a doctorate, or to go for a job. We have become, oftentimes in the, in the 80s, 90s, and aughts, we became professional volunteers because we couldn't see how our skills, our amazing, brilliant, shining skill sets could be employable, that could be something we're paid for. Now we're starting to see that that really means that not only are we perfect for these jobs, but that our subject matter expertise and our lived experience and our years of brilliance and survival and thriving has made us the perfect applicant, better than anyone who has all of the letters after their name. So I come into this space and I just am so just lifted up by the fact that we look at people who have been told that we should be ashamed, that we should buy into the stigma. And instead what we say is, we don't agree with that.
Yes.
We are brilliant. We are amazing, and we are diamonds. And so we know that no one is coming to save us. So we save ourselves and we save our community, and that community that lifts us up, that to me is life beyond HIV. Because I go into spaces and I don't actually really anymore kind of really think about who's living with HIV and who's not. I kind of assume actually all the amazing people are, which has been proven wrong sometimes in the past. There's some pretty amazing people who are not living with HIV, but the majority of people that I know, that I love, that I adore, that lift me up and that I get to lift up are people who are living with HIV. And so even though HIV is the least important piece about it, when we come together and we say, who is our community? Who sees us? Who wants us to succeed? Who sees our value? Who will call when we're not looking so great or when we're feeling really stressed? That is the piece that is the life beyond HIV, which is community that other folks, I'm going to tell you a secret, they're a little jealous of, because we come together, we celebrate the life that we've been given. We celebrate the community, and other folks are just like, well, what is that? I want some of that, because that is powerful and that is heart opening. It just breaks our hearts right open. So I'm going to stop there because I'm getting a little worked up and emotional because I'm looking at all these people on the screen and I'm like, the folks that lift us up are here. The folks that we lift up are here, and this is what we do, and this is our life, and I love it. And I'm so grateful.
Johnson makes me cry, Barb.
Exactly. I was just gonna say, I'm like sitting here, I'm supposed to be moderating this panel, and I'm like, I want to on a sneak tip, like wipe the corner of my eye, because the message is so very powerful. And even though you and Portia did it in different ways, what I'm hearing is strength and community, which is, that's us. And I love it. Action, let's have you add to this, because I know you're gonna bring a little something extra into it that we're not like, let's get it. Come on.
To me, living with the beyond HIV is remembering where we have come from, because we all know that history repeats itself, right? I remember when I was diagnosed, the first thing that I could think of was when I was straight out of high school, working at Howard University Hospital, and my supervisor told me, don't go into this wing. But however, I didn't listen. I went into the wing anyway. And there were guys that were just lined up against the wall and wrapped in sheets and gurneys. And what they were doing was preparing them to die. It was like a real gloomy feeling. And I remember going back to my supervisor, and I didn't have the understanding. So she sat me down and she told me what they had and everything. I remember seeing it on the news and everything, hearing about it, but to actually see it in my face. And then she told me, she said, yeah, they have AIDS and they are preparing them to die. They come here to get checked out, or they come here just to, let's talk to their doctor or whatever, just to see how far along they come. So that was a thing that stuck in my mind. After that, I did like the AIDS watch. The AIDS walk. And I remember the first time I did the AIDS walk, there was a young lady, her name was Precious. She was also born with HIV. And she spoke so eloquently, and it touched my heart that someone that beautiful, that vessel, was going to have to deal with this for the rest of her life, and not knowing if she was going to make it or not, you know. That stuck with me. And then November the 10th, 2011, I was diagnosed. So that was the first, those were the first visuals that came to my mind when my doctor told me that I was HIV positive. So I had to really start to learn and about this thing, and the inner God in me was telling my doctor that yes, I'm going to need therapy, I'm going to need this, and I'm going to need that. And what really um stood with me was two people who really held me together, you know. So it was all about support, you know. My They both were providers, but they were there for me. Justin Goforth and Denna, who I call my super nurse, they were right there. And then I had a plethora of other people that was there. So throughout the whole process of me learning, um about HIV. And I had to relearn on how to relove myself, because, and then I had to not only forgive myself, I had to also forgive my, the person who sexually assaulted me. Because I don't know if a lot of people know my story, that was a part of my story. Someone had put something in my drink, and I don't have any recollection of what happened, but I do know the after effects of what happened, right? So another part of living beyond HIV would be to make sure that we are mentally healthy, not only just mentally healthy, but we balance it out and educate ourselves beyond that, so we can also, while we are walking our truth, walking in our truth, because everybody on this project is walking in their truth, right? Um, and without even knowing it, you are a beacon of light to let people know that it's okay, that you are HIV positive, but you are more than HIV. That HIV doesn't define who you are. You are beautifully and divinely created out of love, and everything that happens was meant to happen. So no matter how tragic it is meant to be, you know. And we are all life lessons, because without a test in our lives, we can't have a testimony to tell people, look, you okay, I'm okay, you're going to be okay, this happened to me. And it might not be in the same value of what happened to you. But however, look, I'm here, and so are you. So now we can keep on going and moving forward, you know. And as a trans man, I see the vision of um trans men coming into play and not being erased or being invisible when it comes to getting help. And I thank God for that, because like I said, my life is bigger and greater than me. So therefore, yes, through my life, other trans men are thriving. Like my son, AJ Scruggs. Now, you know, he is on the on the reunion project board. And so that is just like my legacy and my work going in, and I see that shining through my son. So that is what living beyond HIV looks like. Everybody coming together, everybody working together, everybody is trying to erase the stigma. And just like here in New Orleans, they have a Bounce to Zero campaign that's going on, and this initiative to erase the stigma, erase um the people who are being diagnosed, and just letting them know it's okay that you are HIV positive, but yet you are here, and we want to see you thrive, and we want to see you living. And see now, I was 40 years old when I was diagnosed, right? So 41, at the age of 41, me finding out that I'm HIV positive and have to deal with that for the rest of my life, that's just another phase. I'm also grateful for HIV, not saying that I wish it upon anybody, but my life, I started appreciating life more. And that is more than HIV. You see what I'm saying? So that is the stages and everything. So now now I take my one a day every day. So I'm all right. But the only thing is I have to deal with is borderline diabetes. That's life, right? And I'll have to deal with arthritis in the knees, wear and tear. I will be 53 this year, so therefore that's life, right? So once you take care of yourself and you move on, you can be a productive entity in today's society. You can be that beacon of light that you want to think. Anything you want, you set your mind to, and you can be accomplished. And that HIV doesn't have to stop you. And I wouldn't
Yes.
let it stop you because I didn't let it stop me. So therefore, I
Yes.
just want everybody else to know that, we have to educate so we will not repeat the cycle. We have to break the generational curse. And that means revisiting the 80s, revisiting when people were dying. So we won't have to do that again. And COVID reminded us of this.
Yeah.
But we should not have to
Yeah.
have that reminder of COVID to have us remember, oh, this is what happened back in the day. No, we should be remembering and telling the stories
Yes.
of this stuff so people will not forget. And that's what politics are trying to do. They're trying to whitewash all of our history. So it's up to us, the people that's in the community, to continue to make sure that yes, this is what happened, but this is where we are now. And in order for this to stop, we have to continue to remember where we came from. Knowing
Yes.
our worth is knowing where we came from. Don't forget where you
Yes.
came from, because just keep moving forward, but don't look back, so you can just see the accomplishments you came, but also remember our ancestors who had passed away, who had fought for this, who had died for this, who didn't even have the proper care for this. We
Yeah.
just have to remember so we won't forget.
Yes.
Remember so the next generation, which is coming up in the 30s, the
Yeah.
3000s,
Yeah.
we need to remember that. We need to
Yeah.
let them know that this is where it is and that's how it was, and then to
Yeah.
wake up is to be woke, knowing that we have history, but we also have to pay the way for the youth that's coming up so that they will be okay, because they are our future leaders.
I love that you brought history into it. It's so important. And the other thing that I love is that you continually evoked light, because I think that we get caught in the darkness of HIV, which is the stigma of it, the health issues of it, the is anybody gonna love me of it. But we forget that there's a light that burns that keeps us thriving, not just surviving, but that keeps us thriving. So I love the way this is coming together. And I know I don't even have to ask if the folks that are on here listening find it powerful, because it absolutely is. Joyce,
Yes,
it is your turn.
thank you. I'm
You got
Dr.
all the
Joyce.
questions.
Go
Let's
ahead.
get it. Dr. Joyce, let's go.
Okay, I'm Dr. Joyce Turner Keller. I know typically a lot of people call me Joyce Turner, which is fine. That's what my daddy would be happy to hear that, knowing that I still got his name. And we're talking about what it looks like to live beyond HIV. Honey, it looks good. All I'm gonna tell you, it feels good. Well, I was diagnosed positive at the age of 52. I had just run for Miss Bayou Classic at Southern University. The oldest woman ever to step into a bathing suit, step onto stage and make the news. Anyway, For my birthday at the age of 52, I was given an HIV/AIDS diagnosis. And from that day forward, I have been very transparent about my diagnosis because I felt like I owed my community an apology. I found myself to be, I thought, was well-traveled, well-learned, well-educated, and all these other things. And I didn't realize how disconnected I was from my community because I thought HIV had nothing to do with me. I am a heterosexual Black woman. I was in the ministry. I'm a grandmother. I'm a mother. I'm all these different things. I'm writing, I'm acting, and I'm living life to its fullest. And then I find out that I am living with HIV. So from that point, at that point, I said, oh my God, if it can happen to me, it can happen to anybody. Because all too often we don't recognize that sexual assault happens to be no longer being in our, it is an identifiable risk. And I was blessed to be able to say that before Congress and have that definition change with the CDC, thanks to Hillary Clinton for bringing us to Washington, D.C. to do a presentation before Congress. For me, living beyond HIV, my life really hasn't changed. I'm loved. I'm still just as beautiful as I can be. Still in love with me, stuck on myself, honey, and that ain't gonna change. However, I will say, and some may not understand, some will, but I believe that HIV is the best thing that ever happened to me. I say that because it has propelled me to a level that I don't know how I would have gotten to. I would have gotten there, but maybe not as quickly as I have arisen. I've gotten there because I've been preaching in the ministry for over 30 years when I was diagnosed positive. Some people were listening, but not as many. But the moment the word HIV was attached to this minister's name, to this heterosexual woman's name, to this woman of God's name, you know how they label us. And I hate being labeled because then I feel like I'm another. So, but the minute the word HIV was attached to my name, doors began to open. The phone began to ring. And people wanted to see what HIV looked like. And I was glad to oblige them. I was happy to stand up and say, this is what HIV looks like. And to let them know that HIV had a particular look. And this is 22 years now. I'm still out here letting people know what HIV looks like. And I tell you what HIV does look like. It looks like being a beautiful woman like me, having a 48-year-old man still chase me and help me be happy. And I don't pray all the time, so let's get that out of the way. Anyway, what does HIV look like? You know, what does life look like beyond HIV? It looks full. It looks complete. It looks happy. It looks necessary. See, it's necessary for me to live my life out loud. It's necessary for me to eliminate the stigma that surrounds spirituality, sensuality, and sexuality. Life is good. I'm better than blessed. I am happy. Life beyond HIV for me is 3 children, 13 grandchildren, and 8 tenacious, horrible, but lovable great grandkids. So life to me is full. What I love about living beyond life with HIV, I'm able to go into the theater. I'm able to sit and do a monologue and address stigma that's attached to gender identity. I'm able to use this platform and the fact that I am ordained in the ministry. I'm able to start those conversations that should be had at every kitchen table. This is what HIV looks like to me. HIV looks to me like this is not just a job or diagnosis, but it's a purpose. And that's the difference. I am now walking in my divine purpose. And I believe that God needed a voice, and I believe he chose to use mine.
Yes.
IDSD. Thank you.
Dr. Joyce, yes. You know what? The word that sticks out for me is full, because I think that is a reminder that life is full. This is just one part of us. This is just one, and it's not even the defining part of us. It doesn't have to be. We don't have to let it. I choose, when I talk about my HIV, because I associate it as my HIV, I call it a life process as opposed to a disease process or a diagnosis. And that is what this is embodying, is that it is a life process. Like we are living our lives out loud, not just as best we can, which is the bare minimum, but just in amazing ways. Everyone here on this panel is an example of that. Everyone here in this room, in this space right now, is an example of that, because we haven't given up. By showing up, we haven't given up. I'm so inspired. I'm trying to preach myself just because I'm so fired by all of what you guys have said. Let's do a little bit of a, we're already talking, we're already chatting. Let's get into some questions. And my first question would be Ms. Portia, let's start with you, because we started with you in the beginning. What is the tool that you use to fight stigma? You've been doing this a long time. So what is your go-to response, your go-to reaction when you're faced with stigma? How do you battle that?
I mean, I feel like I just being me, just me. I feel like I don't even know. I can't say like I have it's not a tool that I use. It's just like living my life out loud. Honestly, that's how I was able to take my power back, I guess, in 2013 when I started speaking out. Because for a long time, I just, I let everybody talk and say what they had to say and tell my story in the way that they wanted to tell it, and they didn't even know what they was talking about, and they was just talking just to talk. Like I feel like, how I feel like people, my life, I feel like their lives were boring and they didn't really have nothing else more like better to talk about, just to talk about my life or whatever. But so, I remember I kept it in for a long time, and that's why I keep talking about that whole trauma-informed and mental health piece, because it's really important. But that was the most empowering thing I ever did, was to face my fears, and I think that it also was instilled in me, because that my family, that's how we was raised, to keep everything in, and into that culture of silence, not talk about things. But when I started talking about it and living my life out loud and telling my story the way I wanted to, that's really changed the game. And I had people come, still to this day, I have people come to me and tell me how, like, some people have came and apologized to me for being ignorant and saying stupid stuff back in the day, and telling me how much they respect me. A lot of my friends and family, they always tell me, when I look at you, I don't even see HIV. I think I do use my sexuality in a sense, like being sexy or being sensual, to combat that.
There is nothing wrong with that, child. There is nothing wrong
like
with that. As you should. Yes,
look,
as you should.
I make it look good. I feel like, at least I think,
Yes, yes.
So yeah.
That's why I wanted to ask you about the stigma, because stigma is, for many of us, traumatic, and that's your focus, is being trauma informed, and that's the perfect. I believe, and obviously Dr. Joyce agrees too, that sensuality and that sexuality, honey, there is no stopping us when we use that. Indeed. Ms. Barb, my question for you would be, are there practical tips and tools that people can use to not focus so much on the HIV and to focus more on life? Because you speak to power quite a bit.
Yeah. You know, the number one tip that I have for folks is never allow anyone to tell you that you are less than. To never stand for that. Because and it kind of goes back to the stigma, and it is, you know, what is our tool to fight stigma? For me, it is disbelief and some indignation. When people come forth with, you know, judgment about, you know, how I should be ashamed that I'm a person living with HIV, I literally say to them, oh, you don't know me. My life is amazing. I believe my life would be amazing without HIV as well, but you don't get to tell me how I should feel about myself, how I should move through the world. And I think we also need to say, so that's for so many folks that I'm trying to really kind of help support as they're, you know, starting their advocacy journey and speaking to federal partners, perhaps, that really want us to just go sit over in that corner and be quiet. We know what has brought us here. We know what we need. Our community knows what we need. And so we must, I mean, it's almost a community responsibility. It's this collective responsibility. Like, we must speak up, not just to be valid and to make sure that support happens for us, but that support happens for our community as well. It's a community collective responsibility. And then the one piece that I do want to say, because I've been watching the chat, is that people are talking about being open about your status and speaking, public speaking. And I want to be really clear for me that I think that people can live a really good life living with HIV if they choose not to disclose, if they're not open about their status. It looks different, but it also should mean that you get to make that, because we know that oftentimes disclosing that you're living with HIV is not safe, that there is a lot that we lose because of the stigma and the judgment and things like that. So figuring out how you can move into spaces and can talk about your story in a way that is safe for you is critical, and we need to support people in our community to make that decision as well. And a lot of times people are like, oh my God, I've got this amazing friend whose name is Barb or Portia or Joyce or Akram. I mean, like, I have these amazing friends, and they can put a little bit of their story onto what we've been talking about to be able to elevate what their needs are and what they're seeing also. And I just wanted to go ahead and say that, like, my path is not everyone's path. Everyone needs to decide what is right for themselves and not let themselves be pushed into something that doesn't feel okay. And that's another kind of tool that we have where we support our collective community.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thank you for calling that out. It is really important to understand, because the first few years of me living with HIV, I wasn't public with my status. I'm a nurse and I work in HIV care. So I was doing advocacy. I was just doing it in a quiet way. And I think it's important to remind people that when you advocate for yourself, even if it's quietly, you're advocating for the next person, because you're continuing to live life and continuing to show up for life. And so thank you for calling that into the space. It's really, really important. And speaking of kind of being in the shadows and being quiet about status, actually, you do a lot of work in the trans community. And we all know that there's a disproportionate effect of HIV and AIDS, number one, in the Black community and in the trans community. Are there tools that you can give or tips that you can give for people who are public or not public to navigate life beyond HIV? Because there's so many layers to that community. And so can you speak to that a little bit?
For me, I know my tools were people who I could trust, people who stood out and were there for me. And because when you're going through something, that's when you find out who are truly in your corner. And um just going back to my story, wow. Um they were different. Like, I just thank God that, first of all, my faith have kept me in living for this long time, because I have to say, without God in my life, I would not be here today. Without people being strategically placed in my life at the different times in my life, um, I would not be here. If it wasn't for people like Justin Goforth, Denna, who was my super nurse, my brother Sean, who saw the changes in my behavior, and was like, I'm gonna go to the support groups with you. If I'm your brother, you should be able to talk to me. I'm here for you. If he didn't throw out that olive branch, him and his partner at that time, if they didn't throw out that olive branch, who knows where I would have been? Because I did go to that support group, Living Well with HIV. But however, after that one time, I decided not to go back. And my brother, he saw the changes in my attitude. He saw me, snapping at people. He saw me just drinking excessively, just not being me. And if it wasn't for that, him coming to me, somebody just recognizing the signs of wanting to talk to me and try to find out what's going on. Who knows where I would have been? Um, I tell my talking to my trans masculine individuals, we have to um eliminate the male toxicity that has been placed in our lives, or what we believe that social norms are. We are the ones who define our own masculinities, meaning that you are the one who is in control of your destiny. You are the author of course. God it has your book already written out, but however, each line is about you, and you have the power within you to determine of where you want to be in life and how you want to maneuver in life. And I feel like that is the blessed thing about being trans, because um if I was born a cis masculine man, I don't know um how my attitude would be. Right now, my heart is full. My heart is full of love and light. I'm not angry at the world like everybody else, like you see on TV, or like people put up these fronts. And stop all that toxic masculinity. It's not good. You can't grow if you're hating people. You can't grow if you're not communicating with people. Um, you just have to find people who are in your corner, and you have to communicate on how you feel, brother. You have to communicate on how you feel, fam. You have to
Yeah,
communicate on how you feel, because how else would anybody know what's going on with you if you don't communicate? And
exactly.
that's my problem. And that is the social normalities on how trans men growing up now, they feel like they gotta hide this. It's okay to love somebody, or tell your brother that you love him. It's okay to tell another man, oh, you look nice today. Man, stop that, man. Come on. This is all about you living, growing, and thriving to be the best entity in life that you can be. And you can't be that if you are tearing other people down. I just feel like we just have to have more conversations, and the ones who have the power, I call them that have privilege. They can,
Yeah.
they have maneuver through the places where I can't maneuver in. You have that privilege. Come on, speak up for us, especially if you're in that space. Utilize what you have to help others, and don't forget where you came from. Once again,
Yes.
you know, a lot of us forget how we started our transitions. A lot of us forget on where we say we want to be and how or what type of person we want to be. And then when we go ahead and we do our transitions, we forget where what we set out, we said we was going to do, and we fall into the facade of the social normalities,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
It
You know,
does.
we have, by us being twin spirit individuals, we had the luxury of knowing what life was as a female, you know, even though we didn't identify as a female, we know how it is. So we need to embrace those and who are living in that society. Like, embrace our women. Don't
Yeah.
tear them down, you know, just like we need to be there for ourselves, we need to be there for them too. Because there's a lot of trans women who were there for us, and we need to back them up as well. Don't forget who you are.
Yeah.
Don't get it twisted and to forget the person who you are as an individual,
Yeah.
and treat people how you want to be treated.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you keep the focus on remembering the past so we don't forget, and so that we can change the future. So thank you for that. Dr. Joyce, my question for you would be, how do you okay, for lack of a better way to put it, because you know how it is, the church can be very judgmental.
Okay.
And so what are tools that you use to battle that kind of judgment that is faced from our church family? What advice would you give to someone? Because I know people who want to go to church, but who don't because they're worried about the stigma attached to HIV and being open in the church. What tools and tips would you give for them?
One of the tools that I use, first of all, I start with truth. And the truth is that a lot of people have experienced church hurt, trauma from the church. But as I've said in some other public forums, one of the things we have to look at is where did it start? And if the truth be told, most of us know I did. I came out of a family church. That was my first introduction to spirituality. But anything that was said about me came from family who told somebody in the community who brought it to the church. It's not so much that the church has caused the hurt, it's just that the gossip in the church came from the community, and that's what people were wounded from. But if we would get back and look at where that came from, when I told my mom I was living with HIV, she didn't know how to deal with it. When I explained to her I'd been sexually assaulted, it blew her away. But the thing with that is, I trusted my mom. My mom trusted her sister. Her sister told everybody in the world, even the church. So it wasn't the church that hurt me, it was family.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of time, if we look at the foundation of that, and that's what I teach, because I tell people all the time, anybody that has watched the news and seen the debacle that people have been dealing with flying, no matter how bad those flights were, how many times how many flights were canceled, how long you had to sit and wait, nobody's tried to walk. Everybody took another plane. So what I deal with in the church with people who've been wounded by the church, I've been hurt by the church, but I wasn't hurt by the church. I was hurt by the church family. So if we stop looking after the building, start looking at where it started from. I address it such as this. I don't discount anybody's trauma or what they've ever gone through, but I always look at the root of where it started. And that's where it started from. And if we could tear down some of those walls, and address some of those truths as to who started the gossip and who said what they had to say, who put our business out in the first place. It wasn't the church, it was our folks. It was family. It was family, because I grew up at a time when I was told, honey, whatever happened in this house, you better not tell it. What happens in here stays here. So what I had to deal with when my mom went to my aunt and told her that she needed to talk to somebody, my mother came back to me broken. She said, Joyce, I'm so sorry. I say, for what? She said, well, you'll have told everybody. I said, well, I'm gonna fix that. I called a news reporter. I called the Advocate. I did a show and I let everybody in the world know Joyce was living with AIDS, so y'all can stop dealing with it. So that's how I deal with it. I don't allow somebody else's perception of what HIV looks like, how you are impacted by it, how you're infected with it. I let everybody know when they come to me. My one question is how many sexual partners have you had? Did you marry the first man you slept with? And I let them know. You know, that's the truth. So if we look at where we came from and what we have done as a whole, people don't want to look at themselves. So when you start people doing some self-reflection, especially my brothers and sisters in the ministry, I remind them that God made me woman first. Yeah. I have 3 children. I'm not married, and neither one of them was spoken. So my thing is until we can get people to see life for what it is, and just be honest that life is life, that's how I deal with it. And I'm so vocal. Nobody don't bring much to me no way because they don't think I'm well. So yeah, my craziness is how I confront it.
Your kind of crazy is the kind of crazy we all need to have. Amen. That is taking your power back and not letting anybody dictate how life is supposed to go. No. I'm sad that we are about to go to break because I've immensely enjoyed this chat and talking about this and hearing all of your perspectives. And I know that it helps someone somewhere, because it definitely helped me. So thank you so much for your time and for being here and for all of your insights. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. So we're going to take a quick break because you've been with us for a while and we appreciate you sticking it out and still being here. And we want you to continue to stay on. We do have a representative from AARP that's going to be here after the break. So we're going to take a quick break. If everyone could be back by 4:10, 4:09 and 30 seconds so that we can jump right back into it. Mark is going to introduce our next speaker. And he actually is going to have a lot of really great information that you will want to hear. So please take a bio break, get some water, come back to us. And if you haven't yet, and you do have to jet, please make sure that you take the survey. The link is in the chat. And we appreciate you being here. We'll be right back.
Okay. I am happy to have you all back from our break. I am about to introduce to you the LGBTQ audience communication official with AARP. You can imagine what kind of month he's having, this being Pride Month. And Pride Month reminds me of something that I want to say. And that is that I often tell people who are LGBTQ and younger what a wonderful legacy they have, to a legacy of pride in terms of what we did for one another throughout the 80s, how we cared and ministered and created organizations to help one another throughout the 1980s during the AIDS crisis. But to leave it there with just LGBTQ folk would be inaccurate and self-centered. Because the fact is that when I look at the legacy of HIV and AIDS, I'm looking at the people here in this room. And what I see are Black women and trans men and women and heterosexual men and women and all sorts of the entire totality of the community that responded to us throughout the 80s and today. I often say the future of HIV advocacy is female and Black. And to a large degree, that is true. And I'm so proud of that. I'm so proud of sharing that. And life is about addition, not subtraction. And we have so many more people who are making up the landscape of HIV advocacy and have always been there. And I'm really happy about that. So when we look at the legacy and what we have to be proud of, we just have to look around this room, around this little virtual room of ours right now. To take it further with our presentation today, I want to introduce to you John Paul Hayworth. John Paul became a friend and associate of mine in the last few months because of his amazing resources he was able to provide as part of AARP. You know, AARP is a membership organization of retired persons which has a membership of millions of people. So you've got to figure that a lot of those people are living with HIV, and that's a responsibility he takes seriously. John Paul is going to be speaking to us today about the practical concerns of aging in general and aging with HIV, and hopefully have a lot of practical advice for us. And I'm going to turn it over to John Paul and say, hey, John Paul, thank you so much for being with us today and for sharing your expertise. It's been quite a program so far, hasn't it?
It's been fantastic. I am incredibly inspired by all of the conversation today. And I want to thank you, Mark, and Wakita, and all of the other folks at Reunion Project for thinking of me and thinking of AARP as a potential source of information today for this community, because it is really important to me and to the AARP. And so I'm really excited to get into some practical suggestions and thoughts. And I do need to preface real quickly that I am not a lawyer. I am not a financial planner. I am not a health professional. And so please don't take anything that I'm saying as advice in those particular areas. But AARP does have amazing resources. This is also not a commercial. So you're not going to see me like citing all of the things that you can get from membership and all those types of things. Everything I'm saying right now, and we'll do in my presentation here in a second, is free, whether or not you're an AARP member or not. We love our members. We have 30 million of them. We love all of our members. Everyone is eligible to be a member for the day they turn 18 and have a credit card and want to pay the $12 a year to join. But you don't need to be a member to access a lot of the things that we have available. And that's by design. AARP as an organization is created for all Americans, whether or not you're members or not. And so please do take that sort of grain of salt with all of these things, is that we have a lot of really great things for you that are not related to membership. So just wanted to plug that too.
Well, thank you very much. And I'm going to turn it over to you, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Thanks, Mark. I appreciate you. All right, so I am going to share screen because I did create a couple slides for folks because I think it helps with the visuals, and that way you don't have to look at my face the entire time. So give me 1 second here while I share, and from beginning. Okay, so here we go. So, intro slide, and I'll send these out to the Reunion Project, and they can send it on to everybody. I also tend to use the automatic subtitles at the bottom in case I speak too quickly, or in case or if you need to read, so that it helps to bring that knowledge base. So that's why they're at the bottom. And I also wanted to specifically call out too, I really appreciate the fact that we have an interpretation today. I think that's a really important thing for us in any communities, to make sure that we're recognizing that language barrier is a huge issue for a lot of people. And so being able to provide that is a really great thing. So kudos to the Reunion Project for doing that. So our founder at AARP was a woman named Dr. Ethel Percy Andrus. And this quote from her really sums up what it is that AARP does. That this is a country where it's wonderful to be young, and it must also be a country where it's wonderful to be old. AARP was actually founded in a chicken coop. And the way it was founded is Ethel, our founder, was looking for teachers. And this is in the 1920s and 30s. she was looking for teachers who had retired and figuring out what happened to them. And she heard of a rumor of this teacher who had retired and was living in this town. And so she went and knocked on a door and said, hey, is this woman here? And they said, no, I've never heard of that person before. And after a little bit of back and forth, they figured out that, oh, well, do you mean the lady that's living in the chicken coop? And so Dr. Ethel went over to the chicken coop and found a woman in her 70s living in a chicken coop because there was no pension for the teachers in the town that she was in. There was no resources. There was not Social Security, right? There was no Medicare. There was no any types of programs to help people. And so Ethel developed AARP as a tool to help make sure that every single person, every American has the ability to age as they want to. And so that's where our founding comes from, is really that mindset of being a social justice organization for everyone who is 50 plus. So another quick photo of me, which, I'm sorry about that. I have QR codes throughout the presentation. And so feel free to use your phone to scan them if you need more information or if you need to email me. And I'll send the presentation out to everyone as well. But this one, you can email me directly. I'd love to hear from anyone and everyone about the project, or if I can be helpful of providing access to some of the resources that I'm talking about. I'm happy to do that. Oh, sorry, I saw someone's camera. Hey, Wanda. Okay, got it. So just as Mark said, AARP has been doing a lot of work in the HIV and AIDS space for a significant amount of time. This is some of the examples of the articles that are just on our website regularly about what to know about living with HIV, talking about story times with individuals who have been living with HIV. Mark and I were able to partner on a video about him. And it is an amazing video, and you can see it on our website. So feel free to check it out if you haven't already seen it, because it is beautiful, and it talks about the joy in Mark. I hope I'm gonna try to embarrass you a little bit, but Mark's story is just really amazing, and I was so glad that at AARP we were able to bring it to a wide audience through our website and through our social media work, because, like I said, it's now available for everyone in the public to see, but it's also one of the things that we stand committed behind, making sure that these resources are available for everyone. So our key focus areas are the things that I want you guys to think about as we're talking about the practicality of aging with HIV, are in three main areas, right? Health, wealth, and self. And we try to do rhyming, right? Because it makes us remember it a little bit easier. But health includes anything related to health. So physical and mental health. Wealth is talking about making sure that you have the resources available to age as you want. And then that self piece is really that community and social support that we talked about in the last panel and then the first panel about, connecting with your spirituality, if that's something that you're interested in, connecting with volunteer opportunities, connecting with your people or people who are there to support you. So in health, that space is really challenging, right? And it's challenging for everybody, but it's especially challenging for folks living with HIV or are in intersectional identities like LGBTQ or people of color or in the Black community or in rural areas or in areas that don't have access to healthcare providers. And so one of the things that I wanted to talk about a little bit with everyone here is, how do we think about this? How do we erase that stigma about working with our doctors and with our nurses? And I want to make sure that everyone, I know everyone here is an advocate because you've had to, right? You've had to be an advocate for yourself. And so this is the type of thing that you can continue to do so with your doctors and with your nurses. There is a national HIV curriculum, right, for medical professionals. Ask if your doctor has taken it, if they have had that certification in those types of programs. There's a separate course for HIV and aging. Ask if they've taken it. Ask if they have their certification. Ask if they have that knowledge base. It's something that we can do as a community to make sure that more and more doctors and more nurses and more long-term care facilities understand that the resources are already there. They just need to take advantage of being able to have that learning and understanding what all of the intersectionalities are between HIV and other and aging, whether that's in terms of heart disease or cancer or all of these other things that come into being. And the other piece of that is that we know that the community of those who are living with HIV is getting older, because we're living longer. We are able to do that. And I think that's one of the things that people aren't quite there yet understanding, right? I think the most recent statistic that I saw, and Mark, you may have more closer information, but it's something like 70% of those who are HIV that are living with HIV are going to be over the age of 50 by 2030. That's a significant population of folks, right? And so we have to make sure that prior to us getting to those ages, that our doctors and healthcare providers have that information and know what they're doing when they're working with us. And that's going to help us be able to have that trusted relationship with our doctors to get the care that we deserve. So that's the first piece, to find the doctors you can trust. And if you don't feel like you trust your doctor, there's other ways of finding additional, there's ways of looking for doctors that do have that certification. There are a number of groups that do, top 100 doctors types of lists. You can check with those, see if there's any of those in your area. There's top 100 Black doctors, top 100 LGBTQ doctors. Check to see if there's someone that is familiar with you. I'm speaking from experience right now because I'm literally in the process of switching doctors. I have some orthopedic issues, and my previous orthopedist, I've been trying to get an appointment for 6 months, and every single time I go in and talk to him about the pain that I'm having, he says, well, you just need to lose weight. And you know what? That is not being a good medical professional, because that is not acceptable. You can't just tell me that this pain that I've had for years and years is just because of weight. That is not acceptable. And so I'm finding a new doctor, and that continued advocacy has to come from ourselves, right? And we have to feel empowered to ask for what we deserve in terms of our healthcare. And the other piece, and the stay ahead of your health and care plan, remember too, that because of age as well as living with HIV, there are comorbidities that come with that. And so we have to be very conscious of making sure that we're getting our cancer screenings, making sure that we're getting all of the preventative tests that we need to make sure that we have the ability to live as long and as prosperously as we want to. In terms of wealth, it costs a lot to age. Right? Let's just be frank. It is expensive to get old. And so one of the things that we want to make sure to empower people with is the ability to have access to all of the resources that they might need, whether that's having a part-time job, whether that's having retirement services, whether that's having financial things. And that all takes a lot of planning, right? So there are a number of resources that you can use that are free and reputable to help you do that budgeting and that thought processes. AARP's version is called Money Map. The group SAGE, which works with LGBTQ elders, has one called Sage Sense. They're both very good. Take a look at some of those financial planning tools that are available for free to see what works. The second piece, the focus on expenditures that bring you joy. That's one of the things that the panelists were talking about earlier, and I swear we did not coordinate this, but it was one of the things that really struck me is focus on joy. What are the things that are bringing me joy, and really putting all your effort and power and passion into those things can make a massive difference in terms of your feelings of self and understanding of life. So the last piece is finding the right income sources. There are lots of us that may not be able to fully retire, right? We may need to have an additional income source. There are income sources that are available now, right? And one of the blessings, I guess, of the COVID pandemic was the increase in availability of virtual jobs. being able to work from your house if you're unable to leave, or if you don't feel comfortable leaving, being able to do some other types of work, that's part-time or not on your feet, or whatever types of activities there are. There are, again, lots of resources for us to be able to find the right places for us, including, and again, not trying to plug AARP's things, but we do have groups with our foundation called the Experience Corps, which really helps train and empower people who are 50 plus to be in positions and jobs in which they can thrive, and that are already ready for and understand how to bring on new employees that are 50 plus. Self. This is my favorite part, because this is the part that we get to talk about fun and fulfillment and all of these types of things that really bring all of that joy together for us. So one of the things that we know, right, is that people living with HIV, as well as in the LGBTQ community or in the Black community, have much higher rates of loneliness, much larger percentages for mental health. And we have to recognize those signs and be able to understand where to go to get the help that we need for it, right? And so we have a lot of opportunities or thought processes in which we can do that. The first one is the volunteering piece. Some of our earlier panelists were talking about having days off of being a person living with HIV, thinking about how are we providing back into the community in a way that really speaks to us. Maybe that's working at a dog shelter. Maybe that's working with children. Maybe that's one of the things, like the Stand in Pride is one of the organizations I wanted to highlight. They do amazing work. I don't know if everyone knows Stand in Pride, but they are an organization that pairs individuals with people who have been cut off from their family, and we serve as surrogates. So you might walk someone down the aisle at their wedding because their family doesn't want to be there, or you might be at their graduation. And it really is finding that family of choice, right? Being the family for everyone that is in our community that may not have that same relationship with those who we share blood with, right? The last piece is that seeking mental health supports. We have to find a way to be more open with each other about seeking help, asking each other, are you okay? Are you good, right? One of the earlier panelists was talking about that, about their brother reaching out to them, right? That is a really important thing to be able to do. And it's also hard, right? I was talking with a friend of mine who recently lost their father, and they were talking about being surprised that people that they had felt very close to hadn't reached out, hadn't thought to ask, hadn't thought to bring over, a casserole or something like that. I'm from the Midwest. We do casseroles for everything. But it's sometimes hard, especially when we're talking about grief or we're talking about those types of things. We have no societal understanding or ways of dealing with that. And so it can be really hard to reach out to people. So sometimes we have to, again, be our own advocates and talk to our friends and say, hey, I need you to listen. I'm having a rough week. I'm having a bad day. Can you just listen for a bit? I don't need you to try to solve anything for me. I don't need you to do anything else, but just listen. And being able to be empowered as selves to know what our mental capacities are, and being able to ask for those types of things is a really, really important skill for us all to have and all to learn. And on the opposite side, to be safe people for those conversations, right? For our friends to know that they can come to us and share anything and everything that they want, and it will never be used in a harmful way against them, right? It'll not be gossiped about. It will not go past us, but we are there as those safe people for them. So that's the end of the general conversation. And I'm very much open for the discussion, because I have really enjoyed the Q&A that I've seen so far. I do want to bring this real quick up, this resources chart. So this is anything related. This will link you to the AARP pages related to these things. But again, This is not the end all be all. This is not a commercial for AARP. This is us talking about how do we work together to make sure that every person on this call, but also all of the folks who are living with HIV really understand and have access to all of these things. So I'm gonna leave this up here for a second, but then I'll bring it down and then we can have a conversation.
Thank you so much, John Paul. That was a lot. And do please keep this up. And everything we're looking at now, just to make sure I'm right about this. This is all for us. In other words, this is all free. I don't have to be an AARP member if I want to get more information about any of this stuff, right?
That is absolutely true. 100%.
Okay, I think I see a hand up. Is your hand up, Gregory? Wave at me if your hand is up, if you were looking to ask a question. Okay, could we unmute Gregory so he could ask a question? Go ahead, Gregory.
It wasn't so much a question as it was an observation that AARP is part of my United Healthcare Medicare plan. And I don't know if that's covered under the health QR code, but I just wanted to let everybody know that AARP is very proactive in the health insurance area.
You are like kismeting into my brain right now, Gregory. So I was specifically told, don't forget to tell everyone about Medicare and about all the things that they have access to. So I'm actually gonna put this in the chat because I clearly forgot. But Medicare is ridiculously complicated. And so we have tons of free resources. You do not need to be a member of AARP to get information, but don't wait until you're 65 and eligible for Medicare to start some of these applications and things and learning about what you want and doing all these types of things, because it takes time to get into the presentations or into the system. And so learning more about it ahead of time can be very, very helpful. So thank you very much for reminding me of that. I also, Mark, do you mind if I do one more quick thing? I also wanted to invite everyone actually to it's an empowerment hour. Some of our senior executives at AARP, we have a thing called the Virtual Community Center. And again, these are all free events. I think a number of them you have to register for, but you don't have to pay anything for. But there's some really great activities that are free for all types of different communities. All types of different things. But the Empowerment Hour is, like I said, is an upcoming event. It's on July 11th, and it's going to be talking specifically about steps that you can do to find that purpose or find connecting with people. And so I thought it would be a really great opportunity for some of you to participate as well if you're interested in that.
Your presentation was so jam-packed with stuff. We're getting a lot of questions about people saying, can I get a copy of this and yes. Where do I get it? And so just to be clear, yes, this whole Zoom call is being recorded and it will be shared on the Reunion Project YouTube channel. And I'm sure you can put your phone to get those links there as well as here, but you'll also notice that there's links in the chat. You might want to scroll through the chat in case there's a link that you saw that you want to click on, so it goes to your, where does it go to? I'm so old. It goes on your server, your Chrome or whatever it is. And but when we end this chat's going to disappear. So you don't want those links to disappear. Click on it if you want to share, if you want to save it for later. It's funny, John Paul, the whole theme of this is creating a life beyond HIV, and sometimes that means reaching beyond HIV, and for me that means reaching beyond the usual suspects or the usual resources we might go to. Sometimes we think it has to be all about HIV for it to include us, and here we've reached out to AARP and we found that you're speaking our language. There's so much that you've said that I can easily relate to. Thank you. It opens as a new window in your browser. Thank you, Alistair, for saying the most basic information about the internet that I should know. You talked about Stand in Pride. Somebody said it sounds like that's probably an LGBTQ thing, but can anybody on this Zoom call access that?
Yes. My understanding, and they are not, I am not associated directly with Stand in Pride, I just love them. They are designed to help individuals in the LGBTQ community, but you don't have to be in the LGBTQ community to stand next to someone at their wedding, right? So allies, people who are interested in being there for this community are more than welcome in that project. And they actually have Facebook groups for every single state in the union, and an international group as well. So,
okay, and all I can think about now is how I get to stand by some person at their wedding and how badly I want to do that now suddenly. And but I bet there's other opportunities beyond that. And what a sweet idea! I mean, there's something so sweet about that that it gives me tingles. I'm very happy about that. You talked about social networks, and one thing that occurs to me is that life gets smaller, or at least it does, our worlds get smaller as we age. I know that the people that I rely upon, that circle of friends has become smaller as I age. Are there tips, are there things that we can do to make sure? I mean, I had a mother-in-law once who joined a church, and she wasn't religious at all, but she just wanted people to bring her food.
yeah.
Now, I know that, but you know what? It worked for her. Are there tips as our social networks get smaller? What are we supposed to do about that? That seems like to be the natural state of things.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true, right? You know, they do get smaller for lots of reasons. But I think the other piece of that is we have to take ownership that sometimes we allow them to get a little smaller too. So we need to go and be, if we're feeling that we want more connections, then we have to find places to go to get them. You know, just like you were talking about your mother-in-law, was that right?
Yes,
Going to
ex-mother-in-law,
church,
but yes.
ex-mother-in-law, going to church, you know, finding a church. There are opportunities, whether that's in your, you know, if you live in an apartment in your building, you know, you can join the board of your building and meet all of those crazy people. Or, you know, you can think about volunteering at your library, or thinking about a lot of different things. But again, this is the piece that really goes to where you feel passion, right? Mark knows this. I worked in education for a long time at the State Board of Education here in DC. And so working with youth is something that's been really something that has empowered me for a long, long time. And so now that I'm not working in that space anymore, I have to find volunteer opportunities for that type of work, because it is something that I don't want to get rid of. You know, I don't want to lose that part of myself that really loves working with particular groups. I also have a wonderfully annoying dog. And so sometimes I will go and work at the pound, because it's just kind of fun to cuddle with the dogs and the cats, you know? But there's all of those.
I can't leave without an animal. If I can't volunteer there, because I won't be able, I can't leave without an animal.
This is one of the good parts about having a dog who's mostly blind and can't be around other dogs, is I can't bring anything else in this house.
You know, people in the chat room make the very good point that we made earlier. The cavalry ain't coming. You know, that we have to do this for ourselves, and that we have always been a very resourceful community because of that which we have in common. And that is, you know, a virus about which we are often stigmatized, and so we tend to band together. And when we do band together, there's a lot of perks to that. And I think the point that I keep seeing in the chat room is we have got to be the ones to keep in contact with each other. I mean, all your suggestions are terrific, and we can't. But let's not ignore the most obvious one, which is reaching out to their fellow people living with HIV, those people within those clubs, those communities, those organizations that we participate in, because we know each other's stories really well.
Absolutely.
Let me look at the question. Does AARP have any learning opportunities for older folks needing to sharpen their tech skills, particularly the internet? Is this because I couldn't say what a browser was? Social media or communication skills? something
Yes,
perhaps I could benefit
we
from.
do have a lot of resources for that, and my eyes are going all over the place because I'm trying to find the right link. So, which I just put in the chat. So we have an affiliate called Senior Planet that is specifically designed for those in the 50 plus club to learn about how to be tech, like working with social media. There is a group that does learning how to use video chats and you learning how to use all of that type of social media. But it also provides things like virtual Pilates or virtual conversation starters. And every state that we have every state, Puerto Rico and the US Virgin Islands also have individual state teams that do in-person and virtual events for those in the 50 plus community. And they're open to everybody. And they're for free. So anything that you have that you might be interested in doing, we have. In fact, there's one, Mark, I can't remember if I said this to you before, but my amazing colleague Megan in Oregon holds a monthly, and this is generally towards the LGBTQ community, but not entirely, a writing workshop every month where people learn and can learn from each other and provide feedback on writing activities, and there's prompts and things. So I'll make sure to get that information to you too. I had sent an email to my colleague, like I said, Megan, but I haven't been able to find exactly the link for July yet, but I know it happens monthly.
I know you have mentioned so many things that are resources that you provide that are free. We don't have to be a member, but we do have to somehow access them. What is the home base for where we go to start looking for the many things that you have mentioned?
AARP.org is the easiest place to find them. And there's also our virtual community center has a lot of that information, which I should have had that link up, but I will get it for you right now. It's local.aarp.org, and there's a virtual community center there that has, I mean, just tons of resources or activities. And I would say generally there's probably one going on every day of something.
Wow. Something
somewhere that you can join and do all of these virtual events. So I'm going to try to see if I can get this link in the thing. Okay. So.
Great. While you're doing that, somebody was mentioning in the chat that sometimes it's really hard for us. It's easy to isolate. And a lot of it is the societal pressure and feelings of shame and whatnot, or it's just out of pure habit, we tend to isolate. And someone was doing something virtually, just had joined a social group virtually, so that when they're at home on their own time, they can do something like that. Sounds like you have things going on like that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I do want to note one other thing too. I mean, there are things, like I said, this is not a commercial for AARP, so I do want to make sure to note that there are lots of other types of activities, including there's a volunteer, the National Museum of African American History and Culture is looking specifically for people to help digitize all of the files from the old Freedmen's Bureau. And it's all virtual, it's all on your own time. You get to download these amazing archival documents and physically look at them, type them, say what they are. Can you imagine just the amount of amazing information and research that's going to come out of this once we actually have all this information digitized and can really look at what happened and where it was in the Freedmen's Bureau? I'm going to try to find that link before we close, but if not, I'll send it later.
That would be great. And what is the name of the Bureau again?
It's the Freedmen's Bureau.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
This has been terrific. I'm so glad that we reached out to you. I'm glad that you were able to provide these resources. I am going to, and again, this will be available. Don't forget to fill out our thing. Thank you. Oh, there it is, Freedmen's Bureau. Thank you very much. And don't forget to fill out the questionnaire about what you thought of the presentation today. I'm going to hand it back right on time to Bridget, our moderator. Thank you again, John Paul.
All right, everyone. I am back, and I am back just in time to say that parting is sweet sorrow. I hope that you have enjoyed the program. I hope that you got something out of it. I hope that you are taking something with you that will help you on your journey to building a life outside of HIV. We are not only, we should not only want to have a life outside of HIV, but we need to recognize that we are entitled to have a life outside of HIV, no matter what society tries to tell you. Real quickly, what's happening next at the Reunion Project? There is our next webinar toolkit series. So trust yourself and take care of each other. Navigating COVID and long COVID as HIV long-term survivors. That's going to be on Wednesday, July 12th. And then the Reunion Project Town Hall in Charlotte, North Carolina, Friday and Saturday, September 22nd and 23rd. Don't forget, you can always visit the Reunion Project website to be up on everything, follow them on social media. I want to take time to thank everyone that was here. You as participants listening to both of the panels that spoke today, they gave really good tips and tricks and life lessons and life hacks for navigating this life process with HIV. I want to thank the interpreters for providing language justice. That is important. It's not always possible. And we appreciate all of the work that goes into that. Specific thanks to Cecilia and Mark and Heather and Wahida. And he wasn't on camera today, but Jeff Berry, one of my personal heroes. And short of that, please fill out the evaluation. Let us know how we did. Let us know if there are ways that we can improve, what you enjoyed, what you didn't enjoy so much, what you would like to see coming up for future programs. If you take a look in the link, there is a clip about the long-term survivors and HIV cure research, which incidentally, I've been following that program along and it's amazing. So they have the videos for the series parts that have already happened available on YouTube, so you can find them and rewatch them if you missed them. So please definitely take advantage of that. Clearly, I'm starting to stumble over my words, which means we are tired. So I'm going to thank you again for being here. This is where you can connect with us on social media. Once again, go forth and live the life that you're entitled to. We appreciate you. Thank you so much.